Serious. Drivers of Reddit. What is a scary, weird, inexplicable thing you've seen, experienced while driving at night? Please like and subscribe to support this channel. I was driving on the highway around 2 a.m. a few years back, heading home. I noticed while driving past a U-turn gap in the road that something got picked up by my headlights, but I couldn't tell what it was. I look in my rear view and I can barely tell the black car pulling out of it with all its lights killed, as to be almost impossible to see. He started following me and I got pretty nervous about it. He kept his distance but kept on me for about 15 minutes while I kept speed and pretended like I hadn't noticed him in case he started to speed up. After that, he turned his lights on and ripped past me at way above the limit. Turned out that he was a fucking cop driving illegally without lights on just to try and bust me for something. Son of a bitch. I was afraid I was going to get killed for my car that night. I was driving to work on a day that was really windy. I worked the night shift, so this was at like 9:30 p.m. As I'm diving, I see a car upside down in the ditch and a few feet away was a body. WTF. There weren't any emergency vehicles, so I backed up and got out of my car. I call the police and tell them about the accident and where it is. Dispatcher days, the police are on the way. Can I check if the person is okay? I cross the street to check if she's alive. She is, and she is sobbing. I asked if she was okay. Stupid question, yes. But I was panicking. She was fine. Some cuts that I patched up with some band-aids from my first aid kit in my car. The police get there and I fill out a report. She gets taken to the hospital to check for a concussion and I leave. Get to work super late. OMFG, that was one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. Wasn't the driver, however, was a passenger. I was waiting for my friend to pick me up to go out to a party at around midnight out the front of my flat, which is in a sketchy part of town. Anyway, while waiting to be picked up, I heard all this mad yelling of some man screaming, "Kill me." This freaked me the fuck out, so I went and waited inside. My friends called me when they arrived. I told them about what happened and they shrugged it off. While leaving, we came across a man without a shirt in the middle of the road playing chicken with cars, shouting at people to kill him. We kept our distance from him and called the police. The police showed up quite quickly and arrested him. They said he was under the influence of some kind of amphetamines. Definitely the freakiest thing I have witnessed. One day I was driving by a rural road that was all plantation fields on either side. As I was getting closer to a water stack on the side of the road, I notice a man holding a rifle pressing his back to the water stack. It looked like he was hiding from cars on the road. There was nobody around in that area, so I don't know what he was doing there, but I didn't stick around to find out. Another time I was driving down that same road with a friend. A few miles down that area I mentioned earlier, there is a neighborhood, and as we were driving past it, my friend says, "Look." When I turn, I see a pickup truck leaning on a fence, pointing straight up. None of its wheels are touching the ground. I stop my vehicle in the middle of the road to inspect, but I don't get off. There is not a scratch or a dent on the truck and no damage to anything in sight, not even the fence. At first we suspect that it wasn't a car accident because of the lack of damage, and the fact that even though it's right in front of a neighborhood, there's nobody anywhere in sight. Then, however, we notice that there are two people. A young man and woman are hugging tightly 10 feet from the truck next to a tree. We look at them for a while, but they don't move. We just leave. During summer a couple years ago, I couldn't go anywhere without seeing this black material all over the road. It was everywhere. Black chunks and pieces no matter where I went. They were all over parking lots and in the university I attended, outside of stores and neighborhoods. One day I'm with my brother and a friend. We are driving to a Walmart and I see these pieces on the way there in the parking lot. I ask them if they've noticed that these black things are everywhere you go. My brother mentions that he has noticed but doesn't know what they are. They both don't really care about the subject, but it's all I'm thinking about now. On the way out of Walmart, I tell them I'm gonna pick up some pieces to see what they are. When I see the parking lot, most of the pieces are next to my truck. I get a little nervous thinking that those pieces weren't there when I parked there, but I'm not sure. I pick up a big piece and it's this brittle, dry kind of fibrous thing. I start thinking, they're all next to my truck. Is it me? Am I dropping these things? Is that why they're on the roads that I use every day? Is that why my brother has seen them too, 'cause he uses those same roads? I inspect my truck. It seems fine. I turn the piece in my hand over and I know what it is now. It's a piece of a tire. I look at my tires. They're fine. We get in my truck and continue to another friend's house. They now notice what I was talking about and see the pieces everywhere. I get on the highway and say, why are there pieces of tire everywhere though? Are pieces just really falling off cars' tires so easily? There is silence for 2 seconds, then we hear an explosion in front and to the right of us. Black things are hitting my windshield like machine gun fire. A car's tire had exploded and it swerved in our direction. I slow down and think that this is it for me. The driver of that car immediately regains control and gets off the highway as other cars get out of his way. That answered my question apparently. We still see more chunks later on. We decide to get off the highway and take the long way there. Turns out there was a reason our local news reminds us to check our tires at the beginning of every summer. It gets so hot where we live that the hot roads wear exploding worn-out tires even easier. I was driving home with 2 friends. It was January, we're in Wisconsin. It was cold. Very cold. It was also almost 2 in the morning. Anyway, I was driving past a school that has its play area for the kids in back. Couldn't see too much, but the swing set was visible. One of the swings was moving, that caught my eye. There was a young girl swinging on this swing set at 2 a.m. all alone. I doubt she was older than 13, and she was not dressed for January in Wisconsin. I slowed down to get a good look. She had to notice, but she just looked straight ahead. Naturally, my friends and I are wondering why this girl is out there by herself at 2 a.m. Did we get out and ask? Nope. I don't need to anger a playground demon. I did call the police, however. No idea if they actually checked and saw anything sadly. Driving home from work this summer at 3 a.m. on the interstate, in a rainstorm. Suddenly see a figure almost jump out at me trying to wave me down from the shoulder. There was no car and nothing in the small gully between the highway and forest. Turned around at the closest exit but took 10 minutes to make it back, and didn't see anybody. Called 911 and asked them to check it out after I passed the second time. Who knows what happened, but still a weird situation. Wish I'd have had the presence of mind to slam on the brakes and stop. This is probably a better place to tell this story than a general creepy thread. It's not paranormal at all. I was driving home one night from an evening work event held off-site, which mean instead of my 4-minute commute it was the better part of an hour on a twisty, dangerous 2-lane highway known for moose and bears. It was after dusk a bit, in that, it's definitely nighttime but not pitch black, kind of way. I knew where I was going so I was zoning out and just keeping my eyes peeled for animals darting out into the road. Fairly quiet Wednesday night. A huge truck comes peeling up behind me. I figured it was a local who wasn't interested in the 90 km/h speed limit, which was common, and he would pass me and go on by. This was a big fucking truck, too, at least the size of a Ford F-350, and lifted. Not anything crazy, but I live in a rural area, and big honking working pickup trucks are fairly common. So I didn't think anything of it other than it was just a local in a hurry to get somewhere. He slowed down behind me, as I was doing about 100 to 105, and then flashed his high beams in preparation to pass me. He sped up into the oncoming lane, came even with my car, and then paused, matching my speed for a second. There were 2 youngish guys in the truck, looking down at me in my hatchback. A lone female in her 20s, in dressy clothes, and then they slowed down and got behind me again. This had never happened to me. I was beginning to worry. I was still a half hour from my turnoff to get home, and it was pretty rural along the way. I was driving and checking my rearview mirror compulsively, and this truck just kept creeping closer and closer up to my bumper until they were tailgating me. They'd fall back a little bit, then creep up and ride my tail. I slowed down to 90, 80, sped up to 110 to 120, still worried that a deer or moose would choose this moment to hop out in front of me and then I'd have more problems. It didn't matter. They stuck right on my tail. We passed turnoffs, they were still there. And then they started flashing their high beams at me again and again. On, off, on, off, on, off. Stupidly, I wondered if they had seen something in my car and were trying to warn me about it. But my car had been in for a tune-up the week before and I knew there were no lights out. I had checked it before I had gotten in because I was loading work stuff into it, and it was a hatchback. I could see everything perfectly. Then I started to wonder if they were trying to alert me of something up ahead. Basically, my mind was racing. I even wondered if they were trying to signal me something in Morse code, but it was just a constant on-off high beam dance. At one point they turned their lights off completely, and then I definitely panicked hard. I didn't want to stop at a gas station, because I didn't trust a single solitary gas attendant to help me in the event these dudes wanted to hurt me. The nearest OPP station was still 50 minutes away. I thought about calling 911, but was afraid no cops would be nearby to help me. This was stupid. Do not be afraid to call 911. And the truck was getting closer and closer to my bumper every time, until I was genuinely afraid they were going to run me off the road into the woods or a lake. At one point I turned my radio off and cracked the window, even though it was a cold night, and when the truck came very close to my bumper I could hear the two guys in the cab screeching and hollering. I don't know what they were doing, but it was noisy. I kept speeding up and they kept flashing their beams, getting up to my bumper, dropping back, and coming close again like they were deliberately trying to terrify me. I live near a military base and the main gates are on my way home. On the turnoff from the highway, they followed me. Of course they did. My only thought was that there was no way I was going home with these assholes tailing me, so I turned into the main gates. Nobody at the main checkpoint, so I flew through it and turned down to the MP shack. The truck got to the main gates behind me, then stopped. Just stopped. They pulled through it, did a U-turn, and went absolutely flying out of those gates and back towards the highway, doing way more than 100 kilometers per hour. I got the MPs to escort me home. I don't know what was going on. I was very, very, very frightened that I was about to be run off the road and attacked, or possibly just left for dead. The MPs called me the following week to tell me they hadn't been able to find any complaints of trucks matching that description, but they would note it for the future. In the very best case scenario, it was a couple of drunk or high idiots who thought scaring someone would be a terrific way to spend an evening. In the worst case scenario, that could have been my last night on Earth. Back in college, I was driving home one late night. A 2 hours drive. I noticed this truck with round-shaped headlights following me on the freeway. Thought nothing of it and just thought we happened to be going the same way. Each freeway changes, it was still following me. 50 miles later, it's still following me, staying behind me at a constant speed and good distance. I got a bit agitated. 2 hours later, I finally reached my exit to my hometown. It exited. I knew something was up. I instantly pulled into a 24 hours McDonald's drive-thru to see if it follows me still. It followed me into the parking lot, and realizing I pulled in line into a drive-thru, it U-turned and drove off. When I left the McDonald's parking lot, I was paranoid that the truck was just waiting around the corner to re-follow me again. Luckily it never reappeared, so I went home. To this day, I'm still not sure what its deal was. It was around 2 a.m. and I was dropping my friend off at his house. A van, white, unmarked, was just sitting at a stop sign intersection and flashed his lights for me to proceed, even though he'd gotten there first and had been sitting there for who knows how long. He immediately starts following me, and it becomes clear he's not just going the same route as I was, driving in circles around the neighborhood. I eventually started running stop signs, which he also did. Basically, we were chased for a good 15 minutes before we lost him. I hope it was just some douche having a laugh. We were leaving a wedding we had attended that was held about 3 hours from home. My boyfriend had stayed sober in order to drive us home. I was pretty drunk. As we were driving the dark country back roads to get back to the city, I was half dozing and remember squinting because there seemed to be bright headlights washing over us, and then my boyfriend who was driving started screaming. Like full-on screaming, like I've never heard him do so before or since. It wasn't a loud high-pitched screaming, but a deep in the throat screaming that broke in and out and that left him hoarse, and swerved our car sharply to the side of the road, nearly into a ditch. I came fully awake, and was, "What? Are you okay?" He said that he saw a truck coming full bore towards in the dark, and honestly thought we were going to die. I looked behind us. A long straight road with no houses or streetlights. There was no sign of a truck or any kind of vehicle, no rear headlights on the road or any light from a truck's headlights, which we would have seen, no sound of truck or car, or anything. But he was shaking, and I initially brushed it off as him maybe falling asleep at wheel, which is already scary in and of itself. We were on a narrow country road. There was no way a massive truck could have gone by us, without hitting our car for one, and I don't remember feeling the rumble and vibrating of our car, which was an old POS, that would have happened if a truck had narrowly missed us. So I dismissed it. He still swears that he saw a massive truck coming towards us. However, I do remember a flood of headlights hurting my half-closed eyes just before my boyfriend freaked out. It was New Year's and I was driving home on 495 south from Maryland. The traffic was very light. I was just going past the weird-ass church thing when I saw up ahead a dead deer. Blood was bright red and pooled all around it. I could not see it well from my point of view in the distance, but I could tell that deer was hit in a very bad way. Like everyone else driving around me, we didn't want to hit it, so most people moved 1 or 2 lanes away. Deer are known for looking very dead and just having enough energy to get up and freak the fuck out, so I, at least, gave it a wide berth. So I was going about 60 or so and I passed it. Wait, that wasn't a deer because deer don't wear clothes. On the right-hand side of the highway I saw people, dressed very nicely as you do for New Year's out on the town, running up the side towards the pile of bloody person, and that pretty much confirmed to me I was not seeing things back there. I tried looking up the police blotters and any news about it, but saw nothing about it.